Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Correllian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And with me is my guest, Krys Copeland. And today we'll be talking about Correllian Publishing.
Yes, I'm really excited to be here again this week. And last week I was able to guest host, and I really appreciate the opportunity to do that. It was a lot of fun, and we had some great conversations in the chat about pagan atheism.
Good.
And that kind of leads me to my first topic for Correllian Publishing tonight. We are, as I spoke about last week, we are republishing a book that Speak Your Own Book published previously. This was like kind of a test case for us. It wasn't a book that we really spent a lot of time on by any means. We threw it together in 48 hours and had it online
Oh my.
because we were playing around with ChatGPT and trying to practice our editing skills with it. And we got something and threw it up there. It wasn't great, but it served a test case for future use with GPT on some projects. So that was great. But the content itself was quite good. There were quite a few clarity issues and things like that throughout the book, so I wanted to go back and redo that. Plus, I wanted to add in a lot of my own experiences with pagan atheism and how each part of my path, experiences along the way, led me to each part of my path.
Very good.
Yeah.
We want to say hello to Jade in the chat room and to Bewitched Adventures in the chat room. It's good to see you both.
Hi, Jade. Hi, Bewitched Adventures. Good to see you.
So that sounds most interesting.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this one because it's something I had thought about doing for a long time, because there's a lot of pagans that are not, that don't physically believe that there's like a god or a goddess sitting up on Mount Olympus or wherever. They don't believe in the physical existence. It's more of a spiritual or an understanding in a metaphorical way. And that's also how I feel with regards to the deities. I think these are beautiful stories that have been handed down, and they educate us. And perhaps they are loosely based on some factual things that happened, but the more fantastical parts probably did not, in my opinion. And also, I think that's okay. I think that it's perfectly fine to have stories that enrich our lives. I think To Kill a Mockingbird is a completely fictional story, and it's still a story that had a lot of resonance with my life and my beliefs, my ethics.
And we want to say hello to Mystique Wright and to Mary Hawk in the chat room. It's good to see you both.
Hi, Mystique Wright. Hi, Mary. Good to see you. And
well, the way that you're describing it is very much along the way that I look at things. Also, I just would not have necessarily described it that way.
You're actually mentioned in the book as an example of not necessarily a pagan atheist, but a pagan with room to accept and welcome atheistic thought. And yeah, I find that very true with your diamond concept of deity, that we are all adding a little piece of what this energy force is that connects us all.
And hello to Janet in the chat room.
Hi, Janet. Good to see you.
And I love having everybody say hello. It's very cheerful.
Yes.
You know, I've talked about how nice it is to be able to immediately interact with people.
Yeah.
And you know, when I used to do the Reverend Don's vlog, I couldn't do that. They would interact in the comments section, but it would be after the fact. Although we're talking now about rebroadcasting many of those old videos on Correllian TV, on the premise that people, in most cases, haven't seen them for years and years. And you mentioned the diamond and so forth, and that's the kind of thing they talk about.
Yeah.
And if you go to CorrellianPublishing.com, We have so far 3 out of 4 books published dealing with the subject matter of the vlogs.
Yeah.
Reverend Don's Books of Questions.
Those were a lot of fun to work on. And in fact, the book of questions 1 was our very first project with Speak Your Own Book. It's kind of what launched the whole journey from that point to here. So definitely, I guess, a landmark point for us in our history. Yeah. And yeah, the book itself for pagan atheism is called Nature's Rational Spirit, and it's available for pre-order on our website at correllianpublishing.com. At the time, because we were, just doing a test of concept, a test of an idea, we put the book up for 99 cents for the ebook price. We didn't even bother putting out a print one at that time. And so we were going to keep the 99-cent promise price because I promised at that moment that it would stay that price for forever on the ebook version. And so we've already had a few pre-orders for that. So thank you so much in the chat for those who have supported us on this new project. It's been a lot of fun to go back through and start really adding in my own thoughts, my own ideas throughout the book.
Wonderful. And I believe we have some other things to talk about as well.
Yes. I'm very excited about the illustration merch that we have available for Correllian Publishing. I'll go ahead and share my screen so everyone can just take a look at that investiture memorabilia here. Let's see.
We seem to be having a little trouble with our screen sharing technology today.
Yeah, it seems to not be working for me, so I'm not sure what's going on. Let's try this, and we'll switch it to... Can you see the investiture memorabilia now on the screen? I don't believe so. Oh, I think we do. Yes, okay. So I think everybody can see that. I'm not sure. I think maybe Reverend Don got disconnected, but I will just go ahead and continue until he returns. And we'll discuss some of the products that we have here. So my favorite, of course, is this hardcover journal for the investiture artwork. It has it on both sides, including the date that it will occur, which will be the 18th of this month, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, you're back, Reverend Don. Can you hear me? Okay. For some reason, it seemed like I lost you for a second. I couldn't hear you, but I did check the screen, and it did show that I was sharing properly. Can you see it as well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Another favorite of mine is the steel travel mug. It's been quite popular as well, and so it's great for traveling with and keeping your coffee or your tea warm. I also love the tote bag. It's adorable, great for books. You can even buy the hardcover journal and put it into the tote bag. We have 2 different kinds of magnets, so you can either get the full cover artwork, or you can mark it with the date and the location. So both of those options are available. We also have the t-shirt, and I believe the mug is on the next page here. Yes, we have 2 different size mugs as well. I believe, and this one is heat reactive, so you'll see the picture when you pour your hot coffee or your hot tea into the mug. And then finally we have our portrait on canvas, so you can actually have it and hang it up on your wall, and a poster option for that as well.
We want to say hello to Gary in the chat room and Janet Gann in the chat room.
Hi Gary, hi Janet, good to see you. And I'm going to, it'll do that forever screen for just a second while I stop sharing there.
And here we are.
All right, so let's see, we have, yes, I was trying to say journal and hardcover at the same time, but with pictures, yes. Good point, but a hardcore journal does sound fun too, absolutely. Hi Gary, good to see you in the chat.
And I've seen that some people have ordered Lustration souvenir merchandise and already gotten it, which is cool.
Yes, I look forward to seeing everybody's photos of their merch as they show off their swag for illustration. I hope this is something we continue as well. We
Mhm.
can create new artwork for each illustration, and that way people can collect it over a number of years. That's not going to be the only merch that you'll see up in our store. Soon we will have, probably just shortly after Lustration, we will have our new logo for Correllian Publishing available on some merchandise. If anyone has any ideas of what kind of merch they'd like to see outside of the ones that you saw for Lustration, just let us know in the chat. I'll make sure that we can hopefully find a source for that on our Printify store. Um, yeah, so that's going to be very exciting. I want to thank Reverend Eric for designing our new logo. It's really beautiful. It looks so professional and so crisp.
And Janet asks in the chat room if things will be available at Illustration for purchase, or does it have to be pre-order? At this point, I think it needs to be pre-order, because I'm not sure that if something is ordered now, well, it might be able to get here by Illustration, but I don't know. I don't know that they'll be much physically present.
But you can always jump on the website and order it even on the
Yeah.
day of Lustration. So we will keep it up there for
Yeah.
as long as it's continuing to sell.
And hello to Zane in the chat room.
Hi Zane, good to see you. Yeah, so I'm really excited about the Correllian Publishing merchandise coming online after Lustration. That's going to be very fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes.
I do want to say, while we're talking about Lustration, I think if you order it now, it can be there to be picked up at Lustration. But I don't know that we're going to have a large amount of it at Lustration.
There will definitely be several people showing off the stuff that they've already ordered, though. So
yes,
try to get yours in as soon as possible so that it can be there before Lustration if you'd like to take your swag with you for the event. And I'm very excited because today we started working on your numerology book.
yes.
Could you tell us a little bit more about some of the topics that we'll include in the book, and what new additions we will have because you had previously written a short introduction to
Mhm.
numerology in lesson 4 of the second degree book?
Lesson 5.
Lesson 5 of the second degree book. And yeah, I'm
As I
very
recall,
curious
it
to
was
see.
blue.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
but yeah, I mean, it will talk about Pythagorean numerology, which is what I work with. It will talk about, I mean, all of the obvious things, the meanings of the numbers, both spiritually and in terms of interpretation, the different ways that you can interpret, um, for people using numerology, the different ways you can use it for events and so forth. And we'll talk about also things like master numbers, things like skills like isopsiphos, which is a different sort of numerology than what most people use for numerology most commonly. We might talk about gematria. We were talking about including a section on that. These are touched on in the second degree, but not in great detail. And we want to talk a little bit more about the history of numerology as well. So if you've read the second degree chapter on numerology, that's not everything that's going to be in the book. But on the other hand, those are the essentials, and we will start there. Because, I mean, to me, I take very much the Pythagorean view of numerology, that it's a spiritual system for understanding the universe first and foremost, which we can use for divination, we can use for character analysis, etc. But that is not its only purpose. It's also about understanding the nature of creation, the nature of life, and expressing this through number, which is a very Pythagorean thing to do.
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite sections in the book will be the portion on the history of different numerological systems around the world. Can you
Yes.
expand a bit more on your knowledge of the history of the different types of numerology?
Well, there have been a number of different kinds of numerology. In the Western world, you basically have either Hebrew numerology or Pythagorean numerology. Um, and they have a lot in common, but they are not the same. And the attributions of the different numbers are not the same. And even the particular numbers you use are not the same. And this, of course, is because there's a significant difference in the alphabets they were meant to go with. And everything in numerology, on one hand, comes down to numbers, but it also comes down to the alphabet you're using. And that does make a difference. And, if you're practicing Greek numerology, um, it's the same, but you'd be using the Greek alphabet, which largely corresponds to our Latin alphabet, but also does not. And so we might talk about how different um, alphabets have been translated into number by different systems of numerology. And I think it would be interesting to maybe talk a little bit about numerological systems from other parts of the world. Because, the way that we handle numbers, first, is a conglomeration of many different things. It's like if you look at the way that we divide an hour into 60 minutes, you might easily say, why on earth did we do that? And the reason is that at one point in ancient Mesopotamian history, the number system they were using was based on 60, not on 100. You look at most modern work with numbers, and it's based on tens and hundreds and so forth. But historically, it tends to be based on natural precedents that don't necessarily follow that. And it's interesting to see how that has affected the different ways that people work with numerology. And there are so many systems in the world of divination and character analysis um, that have their own unique aspects and so many different ways of handling numbers. If you've ever studied Egyptian hieroglyphics, for example, you'll know that they had their own way of handling numbers that um, carries its own symbolism that in many cases I think is set forward by the hieroglyphic signs, but is very different from, for example, how we would do numbers. If you look at Mayan use of numbers, they're very different again. And there are certain things that can be said about how these people use numerology as well. Um, and, an example of cultural difference in the European world, the number 13 is considered very important. Some people regard it as very unlucky. Some people regard it as lucky, depending on their background. But if you look at Asia, it's not the number 13 that has those characteristics. It's the number 4. And looking at how different cultures have handled these things, I think is an interesting aspect, even if it might not be what you first think of as numerology. Another thing, speaking of the number 13, I mean, it used to be common for buildings to theoretically not have a 13th floor because they'd go straight from 12 to 14. And hello to Eric in the chat room. It's good to see you, Eric.
Hi, Reverend Eric.
These are all interesting things that we will probably touch on a little bit. And we were talking earlier about mythological stories. And there are a lot of ways that this ties into how you get the interpretations you get from numerology. Because if you look at how Pythagoreanism bases its understanding of numerology, it has a lot to do with planetary assignments, which are mythological in character in terms of the qualities of the planets. And looking at that and also how it's changed. In modern numerology, we include the outer planets, which certainly was not traditional. Traditionally, there were only 7 planets that people normally worked with. There were 7 that they could see with their eyes, counting the sun and moon as planets. And today we include the outer planets of Uranus and Neptune and Pluto, filling up our whole 9. And it's interesting to see how it has changed. And I don't know how much we'll go into that, but in astrology, and I don't think we went too far into this in the astrology book, but if we look at how Pluto has been looked at differently in the last 100 years, it shows you how things do change. And if you go back through the history of either numerology or astrology, you'll see lots of changes historically in terms of how people have used this, and in terms sometimes of how they assign those planetary rulerships and what it means to them. It's like the moon to modern pagans is a very positive planet with very positive associations dealing with psychism and magic and emotion and so forth. But if you look at the medieval people, they often thought only of the negative aspects of the emotional aspects associated with the moon, of interior qualities running counter to exterior qualities, partly because they were rejecting that part of themselves. And a big part of all of these systems is looking at what you accept about yourself and what you don't, and coming to peace with what is there that might not necessarily be what you would initially have wanted, but learning how to make it positive. One of the things we did in the astrology book, and a lot of people now have their astrology books, was to include my own horoscope as an example. And, I suppose with the numerology, we'll do that also with my numerology as an example. Since I figure if you're going to do an example, you should use yourself, because anything else is rather dubious, in my opinion, or at least not including yourself. I've always tended to feel, well, years ago, I was doing video for the first degree lessons, and there's a particular spell section called the Shadow Nose. And I spent some time thinking, how am I going to film this thing? And I ultimately decided to film it myself, because I figure, there are only so many people I can ask to do this. And some people might have been perceived as patronizing, some might have been perceived as embarrassing, depending on what people brought to it. But I figure if I use myself, then the message of the spell, which is to accept yourself as you are, should come across clearly. And I think that also is a good reason for using my own examples. And so, yeah, we have that in progress now.
And it's been a lot of fun to just go through the notes and see what additional things that we can add in, and especially with the history stuff. I'm very excited to see if maybe there are systems of numerology from Asia or Africa that we could possibly include in that history section. There are a couple of other small announcements with that. Actually, I have a question for our audience today. We are deciding on a cover for the numerology book, and as many of you probably know, if you have Rev Don's other books, you do a cover that has a stone background, a stone texture background, and in a different color for everyone. So in our For core books, it's, I believe, white, black, red, and
White, black, and red.
White, black, red, and gold as
Mhm.
well for the ritual and
Mhm.
theory and practice.
Well, yeah.
Yes. And then,
Yeah, I put them together as if they were stone mosaics.
yes. And I love that concept, so we're going to continue that, of course, into the numerology book. For astrology, we did a blue background cover, a blue stonish background cover. And for Correllian Book of the Dead, we did a purple one. So does anyone have any ideas in the chat of what would be a good color for the numerology book? Of course, not using any of the shades that we've already used, if possible, or maybe a different tone or hue of
or a
that
different
color.
combination, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, Reverend Eric suggests orange. I like that. And orange is the color of the Netherlands, so
Oh,
I'll
well,
always go
yes,
for
it
that one.
is.
Yes. Yeah.
And a very good fruit. And Mary suggests green. And I think that Krys has frozen. Either that or I'm frozen. Can you still hear me speaking? Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Janet says blue. Spirit, hello, Spirit, says green and silver would be pretty. And Mary says it's Krys who is frozen. So hopefully she will be right back with us. And well, she is coming to us all the way from the Netherlands. Oh, and she's gone. And we'll see if she makes it back in time for the end. But these are all good good suggestions. And so we will look at them and we will see what might be good. And I want to thank you for joining me today. Now, tomorrow, I had been intending to interview Mark and Dawn Voorhees um, about their psychic work and aura photography, but they are unable to make it. So I will be putting up a new subject presently.
There we go.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. For some reason, my internet just dropped, and it was only on my computer because I can still hear the television going on in their streaming. So, yeah, I'm not sure what was up with that, but I'm back.
Well, we've had numerous interesting suggestions for color.
Blue, green, and silver would be pretty. Green, orange, awesome. Okay, so we'll take those under advisement, and hopefully I wasn't making some weird funny face while I was frozen, but I probably was. The other final thing I wanted to talk about before we close tonight is the fact that we are looking for more authors, especially for fiction. So if you are a fiction author, in particular, we're looking at possibly fantasy romance for pagans. So, but of course, if you have any other ideas, feel free to bring them to us. You can email us at correllian.publishing@gmail.com.
Wonderful. And Spirit says that this is still Bewitched Adventures. I just logged out and logged in without changing the name. So, very cool.
Good to see you back.
Well, with that, we've come to the end of our half hour. Thank you, Krys, for joining us.
Thank you.
And let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives. And we cherish this walk that we walk together. We pray that you'll continue to be with us and to guide us as we move forward. And we thank you with great love and thanks, and knowing you are always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. I thank you for your presence. May you be blessed now and always, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Blessed be.